Sentire Media.
Well, hello there, and welcome back to another episode of A New Life in Italy. I'm your host, Samantha Wilson, and today we're diving into a question that I get all the time, and that is, should I apply for the Elective Residency Visa or the Investor Visa? If you've been wondering if you should retire to Italy or just want to open the doors to come and go as you please, but you're not sure if the ERV or the Investor Visa will give you what you want, stay tuned because in this episode, I am breaking it all down. I will talk about the key differences between these two very popular visa options, their pros and their cons, and most importantly, how to figure out which one will give you everything you want out of your new life in Italy. Are you ready? Let's get started. I'm Samantha Wilson, Chief Dreammaker at smartmoveitaly.com, and this is A New Life in Italy, a show where each week I take you behind the scenes of what it's really like to move to Italy, introduce you to some fascinating people, answer your questions, and show you how starting a new life in Bel Paese is possible for you. All right, let's kick things off by getting a very clear picture on what these two visas are really all about and who they're best suited for. We're going to be talking about the Elective Residency Visa and the Investor Visa, two very different pathways to making your Italian dream a reality. So let's start with the ERV or Elective Residency Visa. Now, this is the perfect visa for people who are ready to dive headfirst into Italian lifestyle and have the financial means to support yourself without working. So it's perfect for retirees or anyone who has a really stable, ongoing stream of passive income. But let me tell you, the visa isn't for the faint of heart. It's got some pretty strict requirements and some restrictions. First up, let's talk about the financial proof, which is one of the hardest things to overcome. You have to show the consulate that you have enough passive income to sustain yourself in Italy. And when I say passive income, I mean income that's regular, reliable, guaranteed for life, like pensions and or rental properties or even dividends. And unfortunately, withdrawals from a retirement account like 401k or IRA or even RSPs, they don't count towards passive income. And that's because you could move to Italy, find a beautiful villa, cash in all of your investment account, buy the villa and have nothing left. And this usually catches people off guard. Now, I'll talk about that in a little more detail in a bit, but let's jump to the accommodation requirement. So before you can even apply for the Elective Residency Visa, you have to have a place to live lined up here in Italy. And whether that's a long-term lease or a property that you own, this is non-negotiable. So yes, you're committing to a home in Italy before you even know if your visa is approved. It's kind of a leap of faith for sure, and one that makes a lot of people understandably nervous. So let's jump to the taxable residency. With the Elective Residency Visa, moving to Italy means that you will become a taxable resident in Italy. And that means that the Italian government gets to evaluate your worldwide income and your assets. So if you've got investments or properties outside of Italy, you'll need to factor that into your plans. It's not something to take lightly, and it's one of the reasons why consulting with a tax professional here in Italy is so important to do beforehand, because there are some tax incentives like the 7% flat tax in the south of Italy that might be the best way forward for you. And finally, there's the work restriction for the Elective Residency Visa. This visa does not allow you to work in Italy, period. Now, this means any kind of work, no consultations over the phone, no opening a bed and breakfast, none of it. So if you're someone who's not quite ready to retire, the ERV just might not be the best fit for you. So that's the main parts of the ERV. Let's now jump into the Investor Visa, or often called the Golden Visa for a reason. Now, the Investor Visa is a completely different option that comes with its own set of perks and a lot more flexibility than the ERV. Now, if the ERV feels a little bit restrictive to you, the Investor Visa might just be the breath of fresh air that you're looking for. So let's start with the financial investment. Unlike the ERV, you do not need to have an income. Well, you need to have an income, but not a set amount of income in order for you to apply for this visa. Instead, it's asking you to make an investment of either $250,000 in an innovative startup in Italy, or $500,000. You're going to buy shares worth $500,000 into an Italian company like Ferrari, for example. But here's the catch. It has to go into an approved Italian business. You can't just throw the money into any any venture you like, or buy a house or buy a piece of property and get this visa. Now, if you're looking at a higher investment level, there are additional options as well, like investing in Italian government bonds. There's 2 million euros that you can buy in Italian government bonds, or even donations into projects that align with Italy's economic goals. So this visa isn't just about parking your money. It's about contributing to the growth and the development of the Italian economy. Now, here's a major game changer, and that is with the investor visa, you can work. Yes, unlike the ERV, the investor visa allows you to work whether you want to actively manage your investment, start your own business, take on a professional role in Italy, or continue to work in the job that you're doing now. This visa does not restrict how you earn your income. And that's a big deal for anyone who's not ready to completely retire or wants to keep their career moving forward while enjoying their new life in Italy. So let's talk now about your family. With the investor visa, you only need to have one applicant qualify for this visa. So your spouse and your minor children, for example, are automatically included under the same visa. And guess what? They're also allowed to work or study in Italy. So they have the same rights and the benefits as you, the visa holder. So it's a win-win for families who are looking to make the move together without the headache of all these different individual applications like you have to do with the ERV. And another huge advantage, you don't even need to rent or buy a property before applying for this visa. That means that you can figure out your living arrangements after you arrive, which takes a lot of the pressure off. Plus, you're not required to establish taxable residency in Italy or even spend a minimum amount of time here. If you want to maintain a home base elsewhere and just enjoy the perks of living part-time in Italy, coming and going as you please, this visa, the investor visa, makes a lot of sense. So what is the difference really between these two visas? Let's talk about that and how they stack up against each other. Think of this kind of like a side-by-side comparison to help you figure out which one works best for you. First up, the application requirements. Let's start with the Elective Residency Visa, or ERV again. This is where things get a little tricky, especially for couples or families, because every applicant for the ERV has to qualify independently. And this means if you're moving with your spouse, each of you has to prove that you have enough passive income to support yourself. Typically, consulates look for a minimum of 32,000 euros net per person per year. Now, if you're sharing income, that's perfectly fine, but you have to have at least 64,000 euros as a couple together. Now, here's the problem. That income has to come from truly passive sources. I'm talking pensions, rental properties, dividends, annuities, these kinds of things. Regular account draws, as I said, 401ks, IRAs, they do not count. So the investor visa, on the other hand, with this option, only one person in the family needs to apply for qualify for this visa. And that's a game changer. So what is the difference between these two? First up, the application. Let's talk about the requirements to apply. The Elective Residency Visa, or the ERV, is where things start to get a little bit more tricky, especially for couples and families. Every applicant has to apply and qualify independently for the Elective Residency Visa. This means if you're married and you're moving with your spouse, both of you have to have the minimum passive income, which is 32,000 net per person per year. Now, yes, you can share income. You can share that passive income, but you still have to have 64,000 minimum, so what's equal to 32 each. And here's the thing to remember, it has to be passive, truly passive sources. I'm talking pensions, rental property, dividends, annuities, not drawdowns from your 401k or your IRA or your RSP. Those will not count. Where on the other hand, the investor visa versus the Elective Residency Visa, only one of you has to apply for this visa. And everybody else is involved in the permesso di soggiorno. So once you get your visa, your spouse will have all of the same rights as you do because you are the visa holder. Of course, the difference is you have to make that investment. It's not about your income, but about making that investment. So between the two of those, I think this is a draw because you have sometimes for some people, you really don't have the option between the ERV or the investor visa. If you don't have passive income to qualify for the ERV, then you have to go to the investor visa. However, if you have both, maybe you don't want to make that investment. So depending on what your situation is, which one wins out between the application between the two, I think it's a draw. But let's talk about now the living arrangements. With the Elective Residency Visa, you need to secure a lease before you will even apply for the visa here in Italy. And that means having a long-term lease in place, at least for 1 year. So an Airbnb, a short-term duration, won't work. And this is a big commitment, especially if you don't know what your visa, what the outcome of your visa will be. It can be kind of costly to do this. The investor visa, on the other hand, is way more flexible. You do not need to have a lease or own a property in Italy when you apply. In fact, you can apply for your permit from an Airbnb or a hotel. And you can get here, get the visa, and then sort out your living arrangements once you've already arrived and settled in. So on the living arrangements, I would say the investor visa wins out here. Now let's talk about residency and taxes. This is one of the biggest differences. With the elective residency visa, residency is mandatory, and this means that you will need to officially establish your residency, which means your taxable residency, in Italy. And yes, that includes declaring your worldwide income to the Italian tax authorities. So if you're someone with complex financial portfolio or income coming from multiple sources, this is something to really think about and understand the different tax benefits that you can take advantage of if you choose the elective residency visa. On the flip side, the investor visa gives you way more freedom. Residency is completely optional. Of course, you have to keep your ties, your main ties in your home country to keep your taxable status there, but you're not required to establish residency here in Italy on the investor visa. And there's no minimum stay required either. So you can keep your primary tax home in your country of origin while still enjoying all of the benefits of this visa. Now, who wins out on the residency and taxes? I think it's kind of a draw, because if you're planning to live in Italy full time anyway, if this is your goal to move here and hang out and live here for the rest of your life, you're going to need to pay taxes regardless of what visa you're on. So it really doesn't make any difference to you if that is your goal. However, if your goal is just to come and go as you please, you need to look at the investor visa. All right, let's jump to the work opportunities. This is another one that has a huge difference. With ERV, you're absolutely not able to work not just in Italy, but anywhere, full stop. This visa is strictly for those people who can financially support themselves without employment. But with the investor visa, you, your spouse, by the way, your kids, everyone can work in Italy. Whether you're planning to continue your career, as I said, or even start a business, just having that option for the investor visa is really a great idea. So in this one, in my opinion, the investor visa is a clear winner. Even if you don't think you want to work, at this point, it's always nice to have the options because Italy has a way of inspiring the entrepreneurial spirit of many people. All right, finally, let's talk about the duration and the renewals of your permits, your permesso di soggiorno. The elective residency visa is valid for 1 year, and then you have to renew it annually. And the renewal process can be time-consuming. Plus, you'll need to prove that you can still meet all of the financial requirements every single year that you renew. The investor visa, on the other hand, is valid for 2 years right out of the gate, and then you renew it for another 3 years. And to renew it, you just have to prove that you still hold and maintain the investment. And it continues to be renewed as long as you maintain your investment or as long as you want the visa. So overall, it's more streamlined. It's way faster to get your permesso di soggiorno. It's with the investor visa, almost everything is fast tracked. So the investor visa on the duration and the renewals of the permesso di soggiorno by far is the better choice if you want to move fast and efficiently. So as you can see, the investor visa has a lot of benefits to the elective residency visa. But before you jump all in, let's take a step back and really evaluate your goals. Are you dreaming of a peaceful retirement in, a little Italian village, planning to live here full time, where your days are kind of revolving around long lunches and walking through piazzas and, just hanging out and loving your new life in Italy? Versus, are you looking for flexibility to work, to invest, or even start a business in Italy? Maybe it's a mix of both. Whatever it is, think about your short-term needs and what you want out of your first year or your second year in Italy. And then your long-term plans. Where do you see yourself 5 or 10 years down the road? For example, some people get really hung up on the fact that they need to find a place to live in advance of the elective residency visa. But in reality, this is just short-term pain because you're going to be living here anyway, and you'll need to find a place. And that alone shouldn't be the deciding factor between choosing the elective residency visa over, let's say, the investor visa. However, if you're thinking more long-term, like needing or wanting to work, then there is a big difference between the two. The restrictions of the elective residency visa can be really difficult if you are, like I said, entrepreneurial or you need to work. So consider your situation, both long and short-term, and of course, your financial situation to choose the right option for you. So when we're talking about the finances, let's have a little chat about the money. I also would like you to think about crunching the numbers. The financial requirements for each of these visas are very, very different. So you need to get a very clear picture on what works for your budget and where your money is coming from. Now, with the elective residency visa, you're looking at providing passive income from very specific sources. And in some cases, you may not have the passive income, but you have the funds instead. And in this case, maybe the investor visa might be your only option. This is often the case of investor visas that we work with. Now, for the investor visa, it's all about the upfront investment. Ask yourself, are you ready to commit to that capital? Are you ready to make an investment in Italy? Where will your funds come from? And what are the tax implications of, say, cashing in your IRA or your RSP to pay for the investment in Italy? Because your IRA can't make the investment. You have to do it yourself. Now, if you're moving with your family, you also need to consider their needs too. Does your spouse want to work? Do you have kids who will need access to schools or other opportunities? Now, the investor visa includes, remember, your whole family, anyone under the age of 18 in one visa. And this can be a very big advantage when you can work towards the 5-year long-term permit or eventual citizenship and you have kids. Opening the door to Italy early on can suddenly give them a new world of opportunities to study, to work, and live anywhere in the European Union in the future. And remember, it is not easy and very rare for a family with young children to get an elective residency visa, unless, of course, they have very secure passive income and a lot of it. Usually families in this situation opt for the investor visa instead. So let's be honest, not everyone can afford the investor visa. But if you can, both options have their perks and their pain points. It really comes down to your personal situation, what your goals are, what stage of life you're in, and how much flexibility you need and want. And finally, my biggest piece of advice, if you're unsure, get advice before you make the decision. Seriously, do not skip this step. While the elective residency visa can be done yourself with just maybe a little bit of guidance, the investor visa is not a visa that you can DIY. And it's not a cheap visa. Fees can start from 15,000 euros for an experienced immigration attorney and team to get this visa for you. And it's well worth it. Believe me, it's a difficult visa. Also, do not forget to speak to an Italian commercialista in advance. This is a tax accountant here in Italy, and they'll be able to give you an idea of the tax advantages and disadvantages to either visa based on your personal situation. Because there's no one-size-fits-all answer here in Italy. Your goals, your financial situation, and the lifestyle preferences will help guide your decision. Now, we have a little guidebook with the pros and the cons side by side for you to reference later, and the link is here in the show notes. But if you're still on the fence and you're unsure, make sure to reach out to us because our immigration lawyer and team specializes in both of these visas, and we'd be happy to let you know which one is best for you. Thank you for tuning into this episode of A New Life in Italy. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with anyone who's dreaming of making Italy their new home. Ciao for now, and I'll see you next week. It's time for listener questions. Just like the old radio call-in shows, my team has picked 3 listener questions, all left on our voicemail. I have no idea what these questions are, but I haven't been stumped yet. Are you ready? Let's get started. All right, question number 1. I am an Italian dual citizen. Can I get Italian healthcare? Well, great question. Actually, as an Italian dual citizen, if you move and live in Italy full time, yes, you get access to the Italian healthcare system for free, by the way, you and your whole family. Even if your spouse is not an Italian citizen, she or he will also be able to subscribe for free to the Italian healthcare system. However, you must be a taxable resident here in Italy in order to access the Italian healthcare system. So you have to pay into it in some way, and that is with your taxes, in order to have access. And we do get this question a lot from Italian dual citizens who are just coming to Italy for vacation or, maybe a few months, but don't have residency. They cannot actually have access to the free healthcare system unless they are a resident and apply for a tessera sanitaria, which is a little card, like a health card, here in Italy. Okay, question number 2. How long will it take to get my permesso di soggiorno? What if I want to travel while I am waiting for it? Well, this is a really, really good question because your permesso di soggiorno, this is your permit of stay, and you will be applying for this within 8 days of your arrival to Italy on a visa. And typically nowadays, because it is so busy, it will take you from the time that you apply at the post office to your appointment at the questura, which is really where you're doing the application and having your fingerprints taken. Sometimes this waiting period can be from 2 months to over a year. And during that time, you will be restricted on what you can and cannot do. So the receipt that you get from the post office at the time that you apply is your authority to stay in Italy beyond the 90 days. So keep this in a very safe place. Take a picture of it, save it on your phone, and hang on to that little receipt. Because in the interim, while you're waiting to get to the questura to actually take your fingerprints and photographs, you have to stay in Italy. You cannot travel to other Schengen countries because you will be an overstay. However, you can leave Italy, but you have to depart right out of Italy into another country that's not Schengen, so maybe that's your home country, and come back directly into Italy, not stopping in any other Schengen countries. If you do stop, especially in the north, you will be stopped. You'll probably be fined for an overstay, and it will be very, very difficult on your application. So remember, your permesso di soggiorno is a process here in Italy. It can take up to a year in order to even get to the police department in order to start the process. So just be patient, tuck into Italy, and enjoy your stay here until you get your permit. Okay, question number 3. I am moving from my apartment and going back to Canada. Oh, so sad. Is there anything special that I need to do? Okay, yes. Depending on your residential lease, check the terms of termination and what your obligations are to the owner or the landlord. You probably have to give some notice. It could be 3 months or 6 months. So make sure you follow that because this is a registered contract. You have to do that. And don't think that you can use your damage deposit as your last few months' rent unless you have a special agreement with the owner. That damage deposit cannot be and is not used against your, termination of your lease rent, because it's for damage. What happens if the house is damaged? So typically the owner will say, no, you have to continue to pay your rent until you're out. And then what you have to do, if you've broken your lease early, you'll have to pay a little penalty. It's something like 60, 70 euros to cancel the registration, the contract in the tax office. And the owner will likely ask you to pay for this. And in all fairness, they should. Now, the last thing I want to tell you about, aside from, you'll have to go through and check and make sure that you and the owner agree on any damages that may or may not have been caused, or any back things that you haven't paid him or her. So those kinds of things you'll have to deal with directly with the landlord. But something to consider that most people forget is this. If you've established residency in Italy and you're living here and you are leaving the country and moving your residency out, make sure that you deregister your residency at your local comune in the tax office. Otherwise, you will continue to be registered at that office and potentially at that property, which would cause problems for the owner, but also you will still be on the books as a taxable resident of Italy. And you do not want that hanging behind you, the Italian government still thinking that you are a taxable resident. So make sure you take that initial step and cancel your residency before you move back to Canada. Well, that's all for this week's episode. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions about visas, citizenship, property, and really anything about moving to Italy that you would like me to answer in an upcoming episode, please feel free to send us a voicemail at our website at smartmoveitaly.com/podcast, or just click on the links in the show notes. Thanks again for listening, and remember, you can find all of the resources and the links to the people and the places that I mentioned in this episode inside the show notes. Ciao for now. A New Life in Italy podcast is a production of Sentire Media, created and hosted by me, Samantha Wilson. Production by London Nero, and with special thanks to Ali Frothingham, Sofia Pisana, and the entire team at Sentire. Follow A New Life in Italy wherever you get your podcasts. And hey, if you're thinking of moving to Italy, whether full-time, part-time, or for a lifetime, come and see me over at smartmoveitaly.com and we'll help you get here and start living your best life. And don't forget, if you love this episode, please rate and leave a review. It's much appreciated. I can't wait to meet up with you again next week, same time, same place. Ciao for now.
Sentire Media.
Hey, podcast producers and show hosts. Do you want to join a podcast network that celebrates all things Italian? At Sentire Media, we understand the allure of Italy and its unique culture. Our devoted team of hosts and producers are all driven by their shared passion for Italy. And we work tirelessly to create the best lifestyle podcasts and content that will whisk you away to the very heart of Italy. With us, you can savor the mouth-watering flavors, get lost in the stories from the past, break down the cultural barriers, and truly immerse yourself in the vibrant traditions of this intoxicating country. If you have a great podcast idea or are already in production and would like to join Sentire Media, head over to sentiremedia.com, that's SENTIRE media.com, and find out how to submit your show.